on Piazza, so that should be helping you. Frankly, Project 1 is probably the easiest of the 4 projects, with the idea to get used to file system and to get used to C++. The hardest things, or if you're not familiar with a bunch of the file system primitives and you're not familiar with C++, to get into that. I will again remind people that even when there are folks who don't know C++, it is really important for everybody working on a team to contribute to the team so that the team stays together, and also just attend to the questions on the exams that relate to the projects. So we're going to be focusing on what happens with the use of indexes, but we're also going to be talking about a number of different file organizations. A heap is basically, the data just gets put in any order, no particular fixed order. And in fact, that's what you're doing in Project 1. You're putting the data in the order in which it comes in. And if you went through the file in order, there wouldn't be any particular order there. And you've seen many different sorts in the courses that you've taken where you keep the data in order. And of course, it's very nice to be able to do searches on sorted files because you can do binary search and things like that. And it's good to be able to find ranges of values, but keeping things in sorted order is a pain. So, you win some, you lose some. Again, reminder that a heap just means a heap of things that doesn't have anything to do with a min heap or a max heap. And then indexes, like indexes at the back of the book, help you be able to find things that correspond to a particular value. And we're going to be going through this. When you have a hash index, it's good for finding matches of a particular value, but it's not good for ranges. On the other hand, the B tree, the B plus tree, which we started talking about last time, not only helps you find things that match a particular value, but also help you deal with ranges. And the insert, updates, and deletes, as we'll soon see, are going to be much easier than they would be if you maintain sorted files. So, what's an index? It's basically something where you can look up based on values, and there is a term which is a search key, which you should not confuse with the notion of a primary key. In this course, when we talk about a key, it generally will mean a search key. Even when I don't bother saying search key, that's usually what it is. When I mean primary key, I will usually say primary key. And the idea is that the index maps a search key value to the entries that correspond to the search key value. What's an entry? Well, it could be the actual data, the data records that correspond to the search key value. You're looking up all the people whose location is California or whose age is equal to 29, and you could get the actual records that correspond to value 29 or to state California. But it also could be something where you have a way of finding the things that correspond to that key, even though the data is not stored there. And that, for example, could be a set of RIDs, the record IDs. And we know that the record IDs allow us to find the record pretty easily using the record ID, which consists of the page ID and a slot ID. And those allow us to find the record on the page using the slot to be able to find the record. Why not go ahead and store the record every time? Well, to begin with, it takes up a lot of space if it's a big record. The second thing is that unless I want to store all the records multiple times, I can only store things with the records once. I mean, sure, I could decide to go ahead and store the records, 12 different times, but generally you want to be able to only store the record once. And so having multiple indexes that have the records in them can be kind of painful in terms of space and also in terms of the work you have to do when you do updates. So there is this notation, K star, which we'll be using a lot, and we'll be referring to as the data entries. And K star could be the records that correspond to key value K, and there could be more than one of them, because not every search key is unique. So there could be a bunch of them. So K star could be the records, or it could basically be the RIDs that correspond to the key value K. So K is a search key, and K star is not necessarily the records, but a way of obtaining the records. We'll talk about ways of actually doing that. We started talking about the notion of a B tree. There actually is a wonderful paper by the name of Doug Comer, C-O-M-E-R, called The Ubiquitous B Tree. These B trees are perhaps the most common way of using indexes, even now. though hashing, gets used when hashing is appropriate too. And there are lots of other access paths. And the general idea is that there are two kinds of pages. There are leaf pages, which is where you put the keys and data entries that correspond to the keys, the K and K stars. And there are non-leaf pages, which act as traffic cops that help you find the right leaf page. And the general idea is that the leaf page have keys and the corresponding data entries. We'll see examples of this. We started seeing it last time. But it's more interesting to talk about the non-leaf pages, about these traffic cop things. And you'll notice that these traffic cop things have more page values in them than they have traffic cop keys. They act as traffic cops. And I'll see if now I can say this right, because I always forget which side the equals is on. Basically, everything that is less than K1, if it's going to be in the tree, I mean, there may be values for which there are no data entries. But if there is going to be a value, something in the tree, for a value that's less than K1, you're going to find it by going down to the next level of the tree, which might be leaves or might be more non-leaves, using P0. So P0 is basically something that you have traffic cop says, for things that are less than K1, go to P0. And now, here you have something where it's not less than K1, so it's greater or equal to K1. But it's less than K2. So now you've got the traffic cop telling you, if you're looking for things that aren't less than K1, therefore they're greater or equal to K1. But they are less than K2. And of course, K2 is more than K1. Then you go to P1. Dot, 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 dot. And when you get out here, right, you have PM minus 1, which again is going to be the same kind of thing. Things that are going to be less than Km and greater or equal to Km minus 1, whatever number M is. And for the things that are going to be greater or equal to Km, you go out to PM. Notice again that there is one more. This starts at 0, this starts at 1. There's one more page than there is a key, because you have to point to the things that are at the extremes in both directions. And that's why that works. And you can see a simple example of this that's shown over here. The root doesn't necessarily have to be half full. Everything else, as we'll soon see, is going to have to be half full. In this particular case, you can put 4 things inside, let's say, a page. So in this example, the things that are less than 17 are all going to be to the left. You have 17 as a traffic cop. You're directed to the things that are less than 17, you go to that P0, points you to this page. It's a lot easier to point here, show you what's going on. The things that are greater or equal to 17, you go to the right. Now there are more traffic cops at the next level because it's a non-leaf page. More traffic cops at the next level because it's a non-leaf page. And so here, we're going to have the things less than 5, we're going to be pointing to over there. The things that are greater or equal to 5, but less than 13, we're pointing over here. And the things that are greater or equal to 13, we're pointing over here. And in the same way for this one, the things that are going to be less than 27, we're going to point over here. But they're not only less than 27, they're also greater or equal to 17, because we got pointed to this side by what we did at the root. So they're not only going to be less than 27, they're also going to be greater or equal to 17. Things over here are going to be things where it's greater or equal to 27, and you actually see a 27 there. I'll take the question after I finish just going over this one last non-leaf. So the things that are greater or equal to 27 and less than 30 are over here. And the things that are greater than 30 are going to be pointing over here. Now the question.
Do the green arrows indicate some sort of pointer between the leaf nodes, or are they just like illustrative?
We'll come to that.
Okay.
I briefly went over that last time, but they matter and they're real, and we'll talk about it.
Right.
But wait until I talk about searching for ranges, and I'll show you how the green arrows are.
Okay, sure.
Question?
How's K determined?
It's the number of things that you can fit inside the page, and we'll talk about what happens when page split or things merge later. Basically, there's a number of things that you have inside a leaf and a non-leaf page. And we'll talk about how things get put in and things get taken out and things get merged together in a little while. And we'll talk about the whole point of the tree, which is that you want to be able to have these non-leaf pages relatively full, and also leaf pages too, so that this is going to be a log-n search. The depth of the tree is going to be log-n. Searching is going to be log-n, O of log-n, theta of log-n. Inserting is going to be log-n. Deleting is going to be log-n. Every operation in a B tree is going to be log-n. That's not true about other file organizations like heaps, where you have to search through everything. Or sorting, where, well, finding values is log-n, but inserting and deleting get to be somewhat of a pain because you have to move stuff around. So this is nice. But let's go ahead, before we get to the insert and delete, remind you about what's going on. If I'm looking for 28, I go to the right because 28 is more than 17. 28 is greater or equal to 27, so I'm going to look over here. And there is no 28. If there was going to be a 28, it would have to be here. There are no entries for 28. Sorry, no, nothing has value 28, assuming the index is up to date. We will always keep our indexes up to date. Remember that when I'm using indexes in the program, when I write SQL, I don't know that I'm using an index. The optimizer figures that out for me. And I don't update the indexes. Heck, I don't know which indexes exist when I write my program and I do an update and sort of delete. It's automatically taken care of by the database. We're about to see how many database systems actually do that. Again, this is looking behind and seeing what's going on. Suppose we're looking for 29, for the entries that correspond to 29. Again, we go right. Again, we follow this page. We go to that page. And behold, there are entries for 29 that are there, whatever an entry for 29 happens to be. So that all works. What if I'm looking for everything that's between 15 and 30, greater than 15 and less than 30? Well, again, I'm going to go to the left now, because 15 is less than 17. I'm going to do, where do I follow time? we're getting down to lower levels of the tree as things it's cascading. Okay, so we're looking for the 15, and because we're looking between, now we don't want the 15, we only want things that are more than 15 and less than 30. So we get over here, the 15, again, we go and follow this page. We go over here, and we don't want the 14. There isn't any 15, we wouldn't want it if there was. There is a 16, and we want everything between 15 and 30, and here's where Pete's green arrows come in. We get the 16, nothing more on this, all the 16 entries. We follow this link. We don't have to go back up the tree. We can follow the links because we keep the leaf pages linked together. So we get the 22, we get the 24 entries, we get the 27, we get the 29 entries, but we don't take the 33 because 33 is greater or equal to 30, and we only want the things between 15 and 30. In the same way, if I only wanted the things that were greater or equal to 24, I find the 24, which happens to be here, there actually is a 24, greater or equal to 24, and I take everything to the end. And if I wanted everything that was less than 12, wanted everything that was less than 12, I'd lean to the left as far as possible, just follow down, find the smallest thing in the tree. And then I take everything until I get to the 12. And so this is very good for dealing with finding the range as well as exact value. So that works very, very nicely. Inserting and deleting. Sometimes there's room in the leaf to be able to put things in when you're inserting. Sometimes there isn't. We have to do with both cases. We want the operations of insert to be log-n. We want the operation of delete to be log-n. We also want them to preserve that searching after you do the insert and delete is not log-n. Now remember, sometimes data comes in, for example, in time order, and if you have an index of this kind based on time, you can get a tree that leans to the right terribly, right? Because your inserts just keep going to the right more and more and more in general. You don't want to have a right-leaning tree. This is not political. You don't want a left-leaning tree either. So you have to be able to adjust things so that it's always going to be taking log-n, and you want to make sure that the insertion is log-n, and the deletion is log-n, and the search remains log-n. So before we get to that, it is probably still the most widely used index. It is gonna be something where the operations take log to the base f of n. F is gonna be the fan out. What do we mean by the fan out? How many kids do you have at maximum? And we're gonna be keeping everything except the root at least half full. So log to the base f over 2 is a little bit smaller than log to the base f, but just by constant, it's not a big deal. Same order. So we are gonna have things that are log to the base f. It's gonna be height balanced, where n is the number of leaf pages and f is the fan out that you have in the non-leaves. Okay, so as I already mentioned, we're gonna keep everything half full, except for the root. Everything is gonna be half full. And that's gonna allow me to deal with this log to the base f, actually log to the base f over 2, to be able to make things work. So basically, there is something, a term that I will almost never be using in this class. There is this term that sometimes gets used called the order of the B tree, which basically says, well, I'm gonna be going ahead and having the number m of things that I put into a node is going to be between D and 2D. D is half full, 2D is completely full. Now why do I say it's mythical? If everything is fixed length, it isn't mythical, it's real. I know how many things I can fit into a page. If all the records are 100 bytes and my pages are 4K bytes, then I can fit 400 things inside, or 40 things inside. Right? But if things are variable length, the number of things that I fit inside for it to be half full may be different, depending on what's going on. And by the way, I mean, it's variable size records, and it could be that the thing that I'm indexing on is also variable size. I could have my key, my search key, being variable length as well. So this notion that you can actually talk about what the order is, half full is good enough, and at least half full, could be more than half full. So the B tree is going to allow us to do not only quality search, but range searches. And again, because the leaves are chained together, I don't even have to bother jumping up and down the tree. All the leaves are linked together, which means I find what I want to be able to find for the range pretty easily as well. Okay, so the search begins at the root. I do the key comparisons, and I go down to the leaf. And so here's another example of this. If I'm looking, if the root is shown on top, and here the root happens to be, full, but it doesn't have to be. The root doesn't even have to be half full. We're going to look for the 15, and basically let's see what's going on. If we're searching for 15, then we're going to look over here. We're going to see if there's a 15. There isn't a 15. Bang done. If we're searching for 5, we're going to find it. We're going to go down here. We find the 5. Searching for things greater or equal to 24, we find where 24 is, or where 24 would be if. Could be 24 isn't there. As it happens, it is, so we're going to be able to find everything more than 24. But if we're looking for everything greater or equal to 23, then we look over here, there isn't 23, and we keep on going through and find all the things greater than 23. So that's all pretty straightforward. And now, a couple of other things. Typically, in practice, this is no longer quite true. It was true when the book was written. But typically the notion of the order might be something about 100 as being the number of things you can fit inside a page, assuming that you're playing with the pointers. The calculation is actually in the textbook. It's no longer quite true. But the notion of being half full is more important than talking about the actual notion of an order. The typical factor, it's going to be between half full and 100% full. Typically, it might be about 2/3 full. Okay, and the average fan out, the F value might be about 133. Again, don't treat this as necessarily being real anymore. That gives you an idea that there's a pretty good fan out. And so what that's going to mean is that if we have 4 levels of the tree, then we're going to be able to have 133 to the 4th records down. The value of n, the number of things that we have at the leaf level, is going to be 312 million records. And height 3, cubed, and so on. Whoops. So it really depends on how many things you're you know, how much fan out you have. It basically, the idea is that the buffer pool is gonna be something, and there's such large memories these days that, you know, almost all the levels of the B tree, maybe not the last one, can be kept inside memory. Sometimes you go to the trouble to have extra memory, because you're better off having the extra memory than paying the cost of bringing things in. But basically, the top, typically, even in the old days, the top couple of levels of the tree, say the top 3 levels of the tree, would generally be kept into memory, because, you know, 133 megabytes isn't a big deal. These days, again, whole B trees may be kept in memory. But remember, when you think about the cost of doing things, you have to not only think about the cost of the amount of memory, but you also have to look at the NUMA, you know, L1, L2, L3 issues that are involved. And unlike your caches, you know, where the operating system or the database can control what's brought into cache and what's thrown out of cache, you know how things get brought into L1, L2, L3? There are basically 2 ways. Number 1, you touch them. And number 2, the hardware thinks you're gonna touch them. So, for example, if you're sequentially going through data, the hardware may be thinking, hey, I'm gonna be touching this other stuff next because I'm just scanning through this thing in order. And so, basically, if the hardware thinks you're gonna be touching it next, it may be bringing it in a little bit early. Now we get to insertions. Here's the way that things work. Part of this is easy, part of this gets complicated. Don't worry, insert's much easier than deletion. So let's get this one right, and then we'll see how deletion works. You find the place where you want to put it. And as usual in life, there are 2 possibilities. There's either room or there isn't room. If there is room, you just put it in the leaf where it belongs, done. That was fine, but it might be that there is no room. So if the leaf has enough space, done. If the leaf doesn't have enough space, you do a mitosis. No, this isn't a biology class, but you split anyway. You split the leaf into 2 leaves, which we will call L and L2. I'm not going to call them L1 and L2 because I keep using L. I keep using the leaf page, but it only has half of the stuff, and L2 has the other half of the stuff. And what you're going to do is you will split the entries approximately evenly between L and L2. But now you need a new traffic cop to distinguish between L and L2. What's the value in that traffic cop? The middle value, the first value in L2. The first value of L2 is the new traffic cop. What do you need a new traffic cop? You have to distinguish between L and L2, which you didn't have to do before because there was no L2 before. All the stuff was an L. So you need a new traffic cop. That traffic cop value has to be up above. So you take the middle value, which is the first value in L2, and you copy it up above inside the tree. And you put it inside the parent. Now you're done, right? Maybe, maybe not. If you're putting a new traffic cop in the parent, then the parent has to have room to accommodate a new traffic cop. Maybe it does, and maybe it doesn't. Because the parent could be full too. The parent is inheriting the problems of the kids. Sometimes that happens and sometimes it's the other way, but here, the parent is potentially inheriting the problem of the kids. The kid didn't have enough room, so the parent had to split, but it could be that you have a situation where L and L2's parent doesn't have enough room either for another traffic cop. In which case, you recursively have to do this up the tree. And eventually, you'll find a place where you can do this, which might be one of the existing nodes, or you might get up to the root and split. So you're going to keep on going ahead, and here's the interesting thing. As you end up splitting a non-leaf node, you're not going to copy. You're going to push a value up, and we'll see how that goes. Notice that that said copy, because the value that you have in the middle, it has data entries, so it has to appear in the leaf because it's got data entries, but it also has to be a traffic cop. When you end up pushing up problems from a parent to a higher level parent, to a non-leaf that's above it. You don't copy, you push the value up the tree. Because it only has to be a traffic cop once. It doesn't have to be a traffic cop twice. It only has to be right. We'll see how this works. So this is a push, and that's a copy. And the thing is that you could get up to the root, and it could even be the case that you needed to put something new inside the root. And there's no room in the root. You probably weren't rooting for that, but it happened. And what happens then? You split the root into two nodes, root 1 and root 2, where you keep the old root and you have another root. And what then happens? Only in that case does the height of the tree grow. You also have to have a new root that acts as a traffic cop between old root and old root 2. So you create a new root node that distinguishes between the old root and the new thing you got by splitting the old root in 2. That's the only case where the size of the tree grows. Because if you can fit things in at any lower level, the depth of the tree stays exactly the same, depth or height. But if the root splits, you got a bigger tree, but it's still log n because of that fan-out point. So let's see how that actually works in practice. Suppose that we need to put the entries for 8 inside this tree. Well, where are we going to try to put them? We go to the left, because it's less than 13. Okay? And now we go ahead and we see we've got the 2, 3, 5, 7. No room. No room. So, what are we going to go ahead and do? What we're going to do is we're going to split this 2, 3, 5, 7. Remember, we needed the 8 as well. So we're going to put half of the entries. We'll put the 2 and the 3. We'll put the smaller number there, 5. We'll put the smaller number on the left in this way of doing it. We're going to put the numbers on the left, the 2 and the 3. We're going to put the 5, 7, 8 into the L2 we create. So we've got 2 nodes, 2, 3, and 5, 7, 8. What node is going to get copied? What value is going to get copied up? 8 was the value we inserted. How many think 8 gets copied up? If you think that, you're not reading the slide. You need to distinguish between the 2, 3, and the 5, 7, 8. You need a traffic cop. And so the smallest value in the L2 is going to be the traffic cop because the things greater or equal to 5 go here and the things less than 5 go there. So there's a traffic cop, but you really want to keep the 5 down here because 5 has values. But now you need 5 as a traffic cop that's going to get moved up. That looks fine and dandy, so you're going to put the 5 into its parent. What's the parent of the 2, 3, 5, 7 node? That's the thing up there, the 13, 17, 24, 30. Oh, surprise, horror of horrors. Well, this is an example showing off how this recursively works. There's no room for the 5 up above. So what are we going to do with that 13, 17, 24, 30 node? We want to have 5, 13, 17, 24, and 30 in it. But you can't put 10 pounds into a 5-pound bag, and you can't put 5 traffic cops into something that can only hold 4. Remember, there are always more than one more page value than there is a key value there. You see there are 5 things for page values and 4 things for traffic cop values, which point you in the right direction. So what are we going to end up doing? We're going to end up taking, and again, I'm going to show you the previous slide. We want it to be able to have 5, 13, 17, 24, and 30. The middle value of those is what? 17. So we're going to have one kid that's going to have the 5 and the 13, another kid that's going to have the 24 and 30, and the new root is just going to have the middle value, which is 17. And again, it gets pushed up rather than copied up. So this is what's going to end up going on. We need to distinguish all the cases across 5, 13, 17, 24, and 30. But I don't need 17 as a traffic cop twice. The things that are less than 17 go to the left. The things that are more than 17 go to the right. I don't need to distinguish between less than and greater or equal to 17 anymore. I've already done that up at the root. So here I have the things that are less than 17 in one kit of the new root. The new root is 17. Just one value. It could hold four things, but whatever that's in that page. Only 17 is in it to begin with. And now the kids of that are going to be the 5 and 13. That's one kid, and the other one is going to have the rest of it, the 24 and the 30. The 17 had to appear twice when we split the leaf, because the value had to be there for its entries, and the value also had to be there to be a traffic cop, which entries go left and which entries go right. But here, the 17 is already distinguishing where it is up at the new root, whether you go left and right. There's no point in distinguishing about 17 lower down, because only the things that are less than 17 are here, only the things that are greater than 17 are there. What's the point of putting 17 inside either of these nodes? You don't. It's already traffic copying at the higher level, so there's no need for it at this level. Which value did I push up? The one in the middle. Why did I have to push it up? Because I can't put 5 things into something that can only hold 4. You know what? Minimum occupancy. We've got strong zoning laws in this neighborhood. There's a minimum occupancy, not a maximum. Well, the maximum is there too. You can't have more than fit in. But the minimum occupancy is half. But you're going to tell me you didn't preserve minimum occupancy at the root. Yeah, the root's an exception. Minimum occupancy everywhere except the root. Having one thing that breaks the laws isn't going to cause a problem. The root is not going to have minimum occupancy, everything else is. So, this is what we get. The root was split, the height increased by 1. A couple of interesting points. There's something that I could have done, and it's important for me to explain it, because you'll need it in delete. There is something I could have done with the original tree, and I'm going to go back to that, and it's a technique that is used in practice. When I wanted to be able to put in the 8, another way of doing it that is perfectly legitimate is be your brother's keeper, or rather, let your brother be your keeper. You deal with your siblings, just the sibling to the left or the right, and you see whether or not the sibling has room. Because another way that I could put the 8 in is I could say, oh, my sibling over here has room. So I'll put the 8 in there. So I'll have 8, 14, 16. What else do I need to do if I do that approach?
Change the root.
Change the traffic cop up above, which in this case happens to be the root. So that instead of having the division based on 13, the division would be based on 8.
Yes.
So I could put the 8 in here, so it would be 8, 14, 16, but then that blue 13 up there has to become an 8. I don't have to put a new value in, I have to modify the existing value. So there's no extra splitting going on. So in this case, the 8 could be put in here, and I'd have to modify that 13 to an 8. In the same sort of way, if what I wanted to be able to do is to put a value like 31 in, then I could put the 31 in here and do the modification accordingly. So the way that this approach works is you check your 2 siblings. And if either your sibling is willing to share, play nicely, then you work with your sibling to be able to make it work. It's another approach. Why do you only deal with siblings rather than looking all the way along? If you look all the way along, you're complicating the algorithm, having to look at a lot of different pages. So only looking at your sibling on the left or the right. Of course, this node only has a sibling on the right. That node only has a sibling on the left. But you look at your siblings on the left and the right, and that can work too. But again, remember, when you cooperate with your sibling, when your sibling is willing to take on some extra work for you, very thoughtful, maybe you'll do a favor for your sibling sometime too. But when your sibling is willing to do some extra work for you, then the next level up, the traffic cop has to get altered accordingly. And again, in this case, if I'm putting the 8 in here and making this 8, 14, 16, the 13 becomes 8.